Breaking news in the Timothy Hudson case. Just days after his official arraignment, we are breaking down the shocking new evidence that could lead to a life sentence for the 16-year-old. From the cell phone trail to the family's shattered bubble, here is the full breakdown of the cruise ship tragedy.
We are following major breaking news. The 16-year-old stepbrother of the Florida teenager found dead aboard a Carnival cruise ship is being tried as an adult. And not only is he facing a charge of first-degree murder, he's also facing a charge of aggravated sexual abuse. And the feds are trying Timothy Hudson as an adult. Now, right now, he is still free. He is not behind bars, and we're looking at how quickly that could potentially change with some newly unsealed court filings. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. All right, let's get to it. This is some big news today in a case a lot of you have been following. Anna Kepner, her stepbrother, has just been indicted as an adult on a federal murder charge and an aggravated sexual abuse charge. Anna Kepner was 18 years old, and she was found dead in her stateroom aboard a Carnival cruise ship back in November 2025. And police are now saying her own stepbrother, who we are now naming for the first time because he is being tried as an adult, Timothy Hudson, he was allegedly in the stateroom with Anna Kepner. Now, we have our hands on some new court filings, and they're raising a very interesting question now that these charges are public and we can see how serious they are. This is the official indictment, and Timothy Hudson has been charged with murder and aggravated sexual abuse. He was first indicted in February as a minor, and he's been living with a family member, but now after these charges have been made public in adult court, you have to wonder how likely it is that he will spend time in jail as this case moves forward. I'm going to be talking to a former state attorney from Florida to help us answer that question here in just a moment. So I want to talk about how this case has been building for months, because we have been waiting for this day for a long time. You go back to November 7th, 2025. That's when a Carnival cruise ship named the Horizon was headed back to port in Miami. And inside a stateroom on that ship, crew members found 18-year-old Anna Kepner dead. She didn't show up for breakfast that morning. Her family was concerned, and then crew members went in and they found her wrapped in a blanket, covered with life jackets, allegedly, and stuffed under the bed. Now, the medical examiner in Miami-Dade County later ruled her death mechanical asphyxiation. This was from an arm bar. She was strangled to death, according to her autopsy. Now, here's what we know about Anna Kepner and what led up to this story on November 7th aboard that cruise ship. She was from Titusville, Florida, about 3 hours north of Miami, where she was a cheerleader. She planned to join the Navy when she graduated high school. And she was on that cruise as a member of a blended family, people coming together trying to start a new tradition. She was with her dad, her stepmom, and her stepmom's 2 children, along with grandparents. Now, one of her stepmom's kids, a 16-year-old boy, Timothy Hudson. Now, here is what investigators have pointed to. Anna and Timothy were sharing the stateroom where she was allegedly found. And according to court records, surveillance video shows no one else going in or out that night other than Anna Kepner and Timothy Hudson. Now, for months, the FBI stayed quiet on this case, but in a very unique way, we learned about how the investigation was going because of an unrelated custody case that involved Anna Kepner's stepmom and her ex-husband, and it had to do with the custody of Timothy Hudson, as well as his younger brother. And we also learned during that custody case that Timothy's mom allegedly admitted that she missed giving him insomnia medication 2 nights in a row on that cruise, including the night that Anna died. And you have to wonder, how is that going to play into a defense as this case now moves forward? Then you have February, and that's when for the first time we saw Timothy Hudson going into federal court. But at that point, we weren't really sure what the proceeding was about. Reporters asked him point blank as he came out of the courtroom whether or not he killed his stepsister, but he had no answer for that. His attorney didn't say anything, and they just quietly walked away with his head down and covered with a hat and a hood. But what happened inside the court on that day, it was unclear because the case was sealed as he was just charged as a minor at that point. And the question everybody's asking, would he be charged as a juvenile in this case, where he would be released at 21 years old if found guilty, or would this case go down in adult court, and now we have our answer today, and it came in that bombshell as we are seeing some newly unsealed court filings that are changing the picture of how this case potentially could play out. So according to a superseding indictment that was filed on March 10th in federal court in Miami, and it was just unsealed, a federal grand jury has formally charged Timothy Hudson with first-degree murder, alleging that Hudson, quote, did knowingly and unlawfully perpetrate and attempt to perpetrate a murder that is the willful, deliberate, and malicious and premeditated killing of AK, of course, initials for Kepner, with malice aforethought, meaning he allegedly planned it, not just a split-second act. Count 2 is aggravated sexual abuse. And I'll tell you, because as we've been following this story, there was reporting that was out there citing an autopsy that said that there was no sign of sexual trauma to Anna Kepner, but apparently law enforcement believe otherwise because of this very serious charge, one that also carries the possibility of life in prison if found guilty. And I know we have a long way to go. In the indictment, it alleges that Hudson, quote, did knowingly cause AK to engage in a sexual act and did so by the use of force against AK. Under federal law, that carries some serious weight, and it is why prosecutors were able to seek adult charges. The max for both charges is life in prison if found guilty. Again, still a long way to go on that front. And I want to be very clear that these are just allegations at this point, and Timothy Hudson will be presumed innocent. But here is what makes this case legally significant. Hudson was 16 years old at the time all of this allegedly happened, and he is now being tried as an adult. Now, that decision became final on April 10th, just 3 days ago, when a federal judge ordered the case transferred to adult prosecution and unsealed the entire court record. And now we're learning just how much evidence the government has in this case. According to a discovery filing that was also unsealed today, federal prosecutors have turned over to the defense autopsy photographs and x-rays, the full medical examiner's report with notes, and an extraction of someone's cell phone, which is believed to be Anna's father, 4 body camera videos from Miami-Dade sheriff's deputies, and FBI timelines created by a special agent assigned to the case. And they also have FARO files, F-A-R-O. Those are 3D crime scene reconstruction technology images that show allegedly how Anna's body was found in that cabin. This is all significant when it comes to this case going forward, and it does suggest that the government is building a very detailed case. And now to understand the case fully, let's talk a little bit about this family and the dynamics at play, because it is somewhat complicated. You have Anna's father, Christopher Kepner, who married a woman named Chantel. Chantel is Timothy Hudson's biological mom. So Anna and Timothy, they become step-siblings through that marriage. Now, on that cruise, the family group included Anna's dad, her stepmom, Chantel, Anna's biological brother, and then Chantel's 2 children. You have Timothy, who's 16, and then he has a 14-year-old brother. Now, 3 teenagers in one stateroom and adults allegedly living across the hall for this cruise. And according to the testimony from this unrelated custody hearing, which we have been following, Chantel herself confirmed that Anna and Timothy shared that room together. She also testified that Timothy needed medication for ADHD and insomnia. There's a nighttime pill that he allegedly takes called clonidine, and he allegedly missed taking that medication not 1 night but 2 nights on the cruise, and that includes the night that Anna Kepner died. Now, Chantel testified that she fell asleep before giving Timothy that pill. Now, as for the relationship between Anna Kepner and her stepbrother, there are some differing accounts. Anna's grandparents, who were on the cruise, they told ABC News that Anna and her stepbrother were, quote, 2 peas in a pod, real brother-sister bond. But then you have the dad of one of Anna's ex-boyfriends who told a very different story to Inside Edition. He said Timothy was, quote, obsessed with Anna. He also alleges that Timothy carried a knife and alleges that Timothy once got on top of Anna while she was sleeping, and Anna was so afraid of Timothy, the dad is saying that Anna would actually sleep at friends' houses to avoid him. Now, we don't know which version of that is true. We don't know which version investigators believe, but obviously we're seeing some very serious charges here, and it's clear the family dynamic is central to understanding what may have happened on that ship and in that statement. Now, that brings us back to the question that we're opening with here today, because now that Hudson is facing the possibility of life in prison, he's facing incredibly serious charges: premeditated first-degree murder and aggravated sexual abuse. Today, he is still out of custody, and many people are wondering why. So here's the key. Hudson was originally released under the Juvenile Delinquency Act. Different rules, different standards, but now he is an adult in the eyes of the court. And the government says those old rules, they no longer apply. And that answer just got more complicated because we've also obtained a new motion that was filed today by federal prosecutors asking the judge to revoke his release and to lock Timothy Hudson up in pretrial detention. Now, if the judge grants that motion, Hudson could be taken into custody within days. Now, Timothy Hudson, per court records, is currently out of custody, but that could be changing. Now, we have obtained this motion filed today, April 13th, by federal prosecutors, and they are asking the judge to revoke his release immediately. So here is their argument, according to the court filing. They say Hudson was originally released under the Juvenile Delinquency Act, which has different rules, but now that he's been formally transferred to adult prosecution, they argue that the Juvenile Act no longer applies. Instead, they say the Bail Reform Act is now in control, and under the Bail Reform Act, prosecutors write, quote, that Hudson is a danger to others and should be held in pretrial detention. And they go on to say there is no assurance any court could ever have that any conditions or combination of conditions would be sufficient to prevent the defendant from being a danger to others. So to understand where he is right now, court records show that Hudson has been living with his uncle in Central Florida. He's on GPS monitoring, and he's not allowed to be alone with anyone under the age of 18. And here's something else that we just learned from these filings today. Timothy's uncle needed to go on a church retreat with his own son, so the defense asked for a temporary modification, allowing Hudson to stay with his aunt and even go to work with his dad, who runs a landscaping company. Now, the government did not oppose the request. A judge granted it. That modification ran from April 8th through today, April 13th, which means today those special permissions expire. And he goes back to the original conditions. But you have to wonder, does that matter? Because the government is now asking for his release to be revoked entirely. The judge has not ruled on this motion yet, but the government is asking for a hearing to make their case, which brings us to our next question, and this is why we brought in our guest. What happens now? Does a judge actually revoke the release for this 16-year-old who is facing the possibility of life in federal prison? And how does this change the legal strategy for both sides? Joining us now from South Florida to talk a little bit about the developments in this case, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Ehrenberg. Always great to have you here on Law and Crime. I know we've talked about this case before, as it just felt like week after week, waiting for this news, and here it comes today. What stands out to you with what it appears the federal government is charging 16-year-old Timothy Hudson?
Good to be back with you, Chris. I think it's a sexual assault. That's new information. We really weren't aware of the extent of this because the feds need a nexus to make it a federal crime. Now, I know it's on the high seas, but generally they don't just charge regular murder. There's a felony murder. It's got to take place in the context of another crime, and that's sexual assault. They also are charging premeditated murder. It's usually a state crime, not a federal one. But I think for me, the biggest surprise is the allegation of the sexual assault. I think people assume because they had a sibling relationship that was unlikely. But remember, it's a step-sister. And there have been some allegations that we knew of about the stepbrother. And the allegations were made by the victim's ex-boyfriend, who thought something untoward was going on with this guy. So the fact is now that the feds must have enough evidence to charge it, because they can only charge ethically what they think they could prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and just to backtrack, because there was some reporting that came out as everybody was trying to understand this case a little better, that there were no signs of sexual assault, but apparently according to the DOJ that wasn't true. They believe that there is. And then you have, the story about the stepbrother and people who found him to be, in their words, was a little, I think, infatuated with Anna Kepner, they had said. And then you're kind of seeing this play out. And we don't at this point have like a criminal complaint laying out the exact narrative. He's 16 years old, and you're a minor until you're 18, typically. Why would he be tried? I know these are serious crimes, but like, what is the bar actually to try him in the adult system as opposed to keeping him as a juvenile?
Well, first, as a juvenile, it's unconstitutional to seek the death penalty, so that's off the table. But why would they go for adult charges? It's because the adult system is better equipped to handle an alleged very violent crime like this. Because if you are charged as a juvenile, the juvenile system generally only has jurisdiction up to age 21. So you're talking about someone who could be found guilty and then set free at the age of 21. And that's why it's not fully equipped to handle something like this. The adult system has more flexibility where they could give someone punishment and rehabilitation. They could blend a sentence. They could have him serve some of the time in the juvenile facility, then transfer to an adult facility. But if you try him only in the juvenile court, then you are limiting your jurisdiction and pretty much assuring that justice will not be done because he'll get to walk free at a very young age.
Well, and you know, one other part of this too is like he's been free since all of this happened. You know, allegedly back in November, Anna Kepner's body comes off the ship. I believe November 6th is the date that they say that she was killed. And he has not been in custody since. You know, we saw him in court in Miami in February, I think it was, and that's when he was indicted on this as a juvenile. He has been living with a relative as all of this is played out. And then now he's tried as an adult, and I know the DOJ filed a motion to have him held in pretrial detention. How likely is it? Because these are two very serious charges that he's facing, that even as a 16-year-old, he would be held in pretrial detention as this case now goes through the adult court system.
Right. Well, it's up to the judge. And because the charges now are so serious that it's unlikely he'll be set free to go live with his parents. I mean, when you're facing first-degree murder charges, you're not going to get out pre-trial. Now, the general rule is that there is a bias towards pre-trial release. But if someone presents a flight risk, or if someone presents a risk to the community, and if you're charged with sexual assault and murder, then that pretty much shows you're a threat to the community. You're not going to be released pre-trial. So even though his age is that of a juvenile, here he's going to be treated in adult court like an adult.
A big difference, as you know well, between the federal court system and then if this case was tried in Florida and say Miami-Dade County, cameras, you know, access to the courtroom and all of that. What are some of the other differences as this now goes through the adult court system that we could see compared to it being held in a district court?
You mean compared to a state court or compared to a juvenile court?
If he was tried, say, by the state attorney of Miami-Dade County, how that would play out compared to how this is going to go now that he's in I believe the Southern District of Florida court.
If you're tried in juvenile court, the hearings are kept secret, and the focus is on rehabilitation, not punishment. But now in adult court, the focus is on punishment, and things are in the public. I mean, the public will get access to documents and will know more about this individual than is if he was in juvenile court. But the difference here is that since he's being tried in federal court as opposed to state court, there will be no cameras in the courtroom. That is an advantage, I think, for the defense here. I think the federal courts should get with the program and allow cameras in the courtroom. We want more transparency, not less, especially during this time with so much misinformation and conspiracy theories. But because he will be tried as an adult, the public will have more access to the information than if he was tried as a juvenile. But because he's in federal court, not state court, there will not be cameras in the courtroom.
And when it comes to his potential defense and some of the reporting that was out there, one was that he had told, I believe his grandparents in an interview said this, that he just doesn't remember anything that happened, that he blacked out. We know that there was an issue potentially with some insomnia medication that he had, and we know that through some of the custody proceedings that had played out involving his mom and dad. But as far as the argument of I blacked out, when it seems that prosecutors have him going into the room where Anna Kepner was later found dead, and some of the forensic evidence, which we don't know of as of yet, especially related to the alleged sexual abuse, how could that defense come into play, for whatever attorney is representing him?
Yeah, the defense is going to point to personal circumstances, medication that wasn't given, but the law looks at the totality of the evidence. So we have a 7-day trial here, probably, That's where the prosecution is going to present thousands of pages of evidence. They've downloaded cell phones. They're going to have witness testimony. And they're going to show not only is there evidence that he had premeditation, but they're also going to show his actions afterwards, where he tried to cover up his tracks. He tried to hide the body. And things like that show that this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't because the meds went awry. This was because he planned it and then tried to hide it afterwards. So it's going to be tough for him to avoid it. And even if he can convince a jury that there was not premeditation here, he's being tried for felony murder as well. Felony murder means you committed a murder while you're committing another felony, and that would be the sexual assault. So you don't necessarily need premeditation here to get this guy a life sentence.
So I know that there was reporting that he had gone to the hospital after, and this was from his grandparents gave an interview, I think it was to ABC News, and then a lot of information about how the investigation was going from what they knew was out in the public. Went to the hospital, he was evaluated, and then we heard that his mom had admitted to allegedly not giving a insomnia medication that he was taking the night that all of this took place. The fact that he's still facing these charges, what does that tell you about the work that investigators did along the way and kind of looking into his mental health, looking into whether he's diagnosed with anything? And here we are, he's still facing an incredibly serious crime for what he allegedly did in that statement.
I think the cell phone would have been important. You know, they extracted cell phone data from this individual and from others to get a full picture of what was going on. And I think that digital evidence may have provided some evidence that there was planning, there was intent. The search histories matter. What is he searching for beforehand? Who is he talking to? What did he say afterwards? There are a lot of things that they're going to examine to show cool reflection as opposed to just a reaction to not getting medication. And so I think it's going to be very hard for him to avoid an insanity defense, to have an insanity defense, or to have a defense that I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't plan it, didn't think about it, it was a reaction, it's like a monster got inside me. I think this is going to be difficult because once you start covering up your crimes, then it doesn't look like it was so spontaneous. Once you start covering up your tracks, then it looks like this was planned.
As the defense attorney on this case, how much of a surprise do you think today is? Based off the fact that he was indicted back in February on a murder charge, you knew all of this at this point. I mean, what was, if you could take us inside what it's like for a defendant at this point and his team, especially after February, where those are the charges that he's going to be facing. At that point, it was a juvenile.
I think what's surprising is that the sexual assault is in there. That was something that I think all of us were unsure of because we knew there was a murder that took place. So I can see the murder charge, but then the sexual assault, that's something new. But as far as the criminal defense lawyers, I would bet they were aware of this in advance. They're generally not blindsided. They know based on where the case is going, based on where the subpoenas are, based on the length of time it takes to investigate, and based on leaks from the U.S. Attorney's Office that they were prepared for this. I'll bet you they told their client that you're going to be charged with murder and possibly even sexual assault because they know what happened. They talked to the client, and that this will not be in juvenile court. So I don't think the defense lawyers here were blindsided. Perhaps the family was blindsided because they appear to still be living in a bubble saying how wonderful the relationship was between the step-siblings.
Right.
When in reality, it looks like it was far different.
Yeah, I remember the line from, I think it was the grandmother said they were two peas in a pod. And you look at the allegations now, it's hard to believe that. Of course, the way that people appear to members of their family and to reality sometimes can be really different. If he is found, well, before I get to what a potential punishment could look like, I just think of, for the prosecutors, like you have video of him, she goes into the room, he goes into the room, she's found the next morning under the bed in this stateroom, and he leaves the room. Like, it seems like in some ways you could look on the outside and say it was a pretty open and shut case. Like, how confident are prosecutors at this point? I know no case is ever 100% sure, but it seems like a pretty straightforward narrative that they could put out there of what happened inside that room.
Yeah, well, he was the last one to see her alive. He was the last one with her. and you're on a cruise ship. It's not like you're out in the wilderness. There are cameras everywhere. There are access cards to know who swiped what and when. So it's hard to get away with a crime like this on a cruise ship. And when they asked him about his actions the night before, when they questioned him, he said he didn't remember. It's not exactly what you'd say if you're professing your innocence. And so I think that they've got this guy dead to rights. The big question was whether he'd be able to use an excuse of medication and his age, because he's a juvenile, to his benefit, but apparently not.
No, and now, if he were to be found guilty of these charges, and we'll see how things play out, life imprisonment is the maximum penalty on both of the counts that he's facing. But even still, 16, 17 years old, going off to federal prison, what does life look like for someone that young being found guilty of charges so serious?
Well, the law allows for a life sentence for a juvenile, not the death penalty, but you still have to jump through extra hoops. It's not so easy to get life in prison. You have to go through the juvenile's special circumstances and then find that life is appropriate. Also, then there is a chance that that individual could get released at some point because they have the opportunity for a review later on. So it's not life without parole, but it is life in prison, and he's not going to get out even under the best circumstances for him. If he's found guilty and gets a life sentence, he's not going to get out for decades. And that's much better than the juvenile system, because had he been found guilty in the juvenile system, he would likely be out by the time he's 21.
And what do you make of the timeline? I know in the federal system, things move really slowly. Anna Kepner died, according to authorities, November 6th. Here we are mid-April when he's now facing charges as an adult. What do you make of that timeline to get to this point?
Prosecutors have one shot at it because there's a speedy trial clock that runs once you charge someone. So if you charge someone too soon and you're not ready, the defense can invoke the speedy trial rule, and then you're forced to go to trial without your ducks in a row. They didn't want that to happen. You're talking about a murder case here. And so it's better to slow it down and delay it at the front end than to allow them to go free forever at the back end.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, a major development today. Dave Ehrenberg, always great to have you here on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.